This is the audio-visual version of Taking the High Road, Drug Education for Offenders, and this is Module 1, titled Tobacco Explains Key Drug Issues. It was over 500 years ago, in 1492, when Christopher Columbus set foot in the Americas. He called the place where he landed the West Indies, but today it is the country of the Bahamas. The natives that Columbus and dozens of later explorers encountered in the Americas carried rolls of dried leaves with them. While some natives rolled the leaves into small cylinders and then smoked them, others used the leaves in ceremonies of all kinds. They burned the leaves in bowls, carved pipes, and open fires. In some of the ceremonies conducted by shamans, who are holy men, the natives went into a stupor after smoking the leaves. They would sit for hours at a time and fall into a dreamy, half-awake daze. Columbus thought that the natives called the leaves something that sounded like tobacco, so that became the name for the leaves. Columbus carried tobacco back to Europe, and soon it became a fashionable thing to use. It became a major trading product. People snorted it, chewed it, smoked it in pipes, and rolled cigars. It became so popular that by the year 1614, the city of London had over 7,000 tobacco shops alone. About the same time, a famous Englishman named Francis Bacon wrote that users of tobacco couldn't seem to quit, and in many other parts of Europe and Asia, tobacco use was actually outlawed because of the many health problems that were quickly noticed. The power of tobacco can be seen in a lot of ways, but you might not know that the famous psychologist Sigmund Freud was deemed to be a tobacco addict. When he was first diagnosed with heart disease at the early age of 38, Freud was smoking 20 large cigars a day. Many pictures of Freud show him with his famous cigars. Freud stopped his cigar habit for 7 weeks, but wrote that he suffered terrible depression and a craving that forced him to go back to smoking 20 cigars a day. He then developed cancer of the jaw and eventually had parts of his jaw surgically removed. Carved wooden pieces were implanted into his jaw as replacements. Freud was actually once committed to a sanitarium by his doctor, where he was forced to quit for all of 23 days, but as soon as he was released, he started to smoke cigars again. He suffered constant pain and died because of the cancer, but he smoked to the very end, acknowledging that it caused his health problems and pain. Uncle Ed and Pappy. Not that many years ago, people were allowed to smoke in hospitals as long as oxygen wasn't present. One of us had an uncle named Ed who traveled to visit his brother. Uncle Ed was about 65 years old at the time, and he carried an oxygen bottle because of heart and lung diseases. He had carried the oxygen bottles for 10 years. He had a 4-pack-a-day cigarette habit, which according to both him and his doctors was the cause of the diseases. He stayed with his brother until one night he had problems breathing and was taken to a hospital in an ambulance. He died 2 weeks later in the hospital. The last time we visited him in his hospital room, Uncle Ed was barely able to breathe, and he seemed to be at death's door. But during the visit, he sat up, pulled the oxygen tubes off his face, slowly moved to a window, opened it, and lit a cigarette. It was astounding, but none of us said anything. He said he liked to smoke, and it was too late to change. It was unfortunately true for him. On the other side of the family was a grandfather we'll just call Pappy. Starting at age 16, he smoked about a pack of cigarettes every day. When he got into his 50s, he switched to pipes and rolling his own cigarettes. He never had any physical problems from it that we knew about, and he never had any breathing problems. Pappy died at age 98 from failing kidneys and having kidney stones for years. He had no breathing problems, no heart disease, and no cancer. He's an example that a lot of smokers like to use. Just about everyone can think of someone who smoked for decades and never seemed to have a problem with it. A lot of smokers will say that maybe they'll be like that, meaning that maybe they can smoke without having any of the diseases caused by smoking. It's true that some people smoke without developing problems, but it's also true that not many people do. Some people just decide that if they get cancer or some other disease from smoking, they'll cross that bridge when they come to it. Cigarettes and nicotine. Modern cigarettes are a rather ingenious delivery system for the drug nicotine. Nicotine is an unusual stimulant, a drug that speeds up several body systems, but it is also a relaxant. That is, it can calm someone down, but also speeds some people up. Going back to Uncle Ed for a moment, his 4-pack-a-day habit totaled 80 cigarettes a day. During the night, he would get up about every hour or so and smoke a cigarette, meaning that he smoked about 8 cigarettes through the night. During the day, he smoked the other 72. What this means is simple. He lit up a cigarette about every 15 minutes while he was awake. For about 5 minutes or so, he would smoke, and then, after another 10 minutes, he needed another. When Uncle Ed was at work, he could smoke whenever he wanted, which was common back then. A 4-pack-a-day habit is about as severe a cigarette smoking habit can be, and it was over a decade that Uncle Ed went from a few cigarettes a day to what is about the maximum possible. And if you think about Freud's 20-cigar-a-day habit, he was smoking constantly. Cigarette smoke actually contains over 4,000 different chemicals. You read that right, 4,000 different chemicals. They are a blended concoction designed to deliver nicotine and a lot of other stuff to your lungs, your bloodstream, and brain. It is the tar and other chemicals in the smoke that cause most lung and breathing problems. It's also worth mentioning that any form of tobacco use, from smoking to using a pinch between the lip and gums, is quite unhealthy. It's also notable that cigarette packs carry a warning that basically say using this product may well kill you. So, why is tobacco legal? In the interest of being bluntly and completely honest, there's a lot of money involved in tobacco, from growers to distributors to the countless stores that sell it, and there are taxes collected on tobacco. Of course, tobacco use has been banned in a lot of places, including virtually all jails and prisons. The tobacco industry admits it causes cancer and a disease called COPD, or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. If tobacco products were actually made illegal, a black market would most certainly develop. And so, like alcohol and now in some places marijuana, tobacco products remain legal, but also restricted. Tobacco use actually explains just about every issue relevant to other drugs of abuse, and the answers to many important questions are the same with tobacco as with almost all other drugs. Why did people start smoking? It's worth noting that the tobacco Christopher Columbus and other early explorers encountered with Native American Indians was not the same as tobacco today. It was much, much stronger and had more nicotine in it. In truth, Columbus was introduced to it in social ceremonies of greeting and friendship when the Indians were welcoming the newcomers. Many of the explorers first smoked with the Indians out of a sense of social pressure and also from simple curiosity. Modern tobacco has less nicotine, but as stated earlier, it has a lot of other chemicals blended in to create other effects. Today, people start smoking for the same reasons they might try marijuana, cocaine, alcohol, heroin, or any other drug. Some people are curious. They just want to see the effect of the drug. Some people start because their friends encourage them. Some people do it because they want to be seen as cool. And some start smoking or using drugs because it's forbidden or illegal. They want to rebel against authority. They want to show others that they can't be controlled and will do what they want. Why do people keep smoking? As with all other drug use, if a person keeps using after he or she tries smoking, it's simply because there is something about it they like. It could be that they like the image they think it gives them, or they like the approval or disapproval from others. If a person keeps smoking, they usually like the way it makes them feel. The main reason people use drugs, at least after the first few tries, is because they say it makes them feel better. In short, they like it. It makes them feel better. Why do some people increase how much they smoke? If a person likes the way tobacco makes him or her feel, then they would probably do it more often. But almost all drugs become less effective over time. So a person who uses typically will gradually increase the amount of a drug they are using to keep feeling the way they want to feel. It's called tolerance. Tolerance is caused by several things that happen in the body when a drug is used. One major cause of tolerance is that the liver produces substances called enzymes that are made so the body can destroy the drug. For example, the liver produces specific enzymes that target the smallest particles of the drug as they move through the bloodstream. These enzymes actually find and attach themselves to the molecules of a drug and break them so that the drug no longer works. Nicotine, alcohol, meth, cocaine, heroin, and just about every other drug results in the liver making enzymes to destroy that specific drug. That's actually pretty interesting, or it should be. Why do you think that the body has a built-in system to destroy drugs? Why do people continue to smoke after obvious problems with it appears? Again, as is the case with just about every drug known to us, there is another body process that occurs when a drug is repeatedly taken over time. It's sometimes called drug dependence or addiction. What it means is that if a person stops using the drug after he becomes addicted or dependent on it, he'll go through some sort of withdrawal. With some drugs, withdrawal can be life-threatening. Freud's depression and constant craving for nicotine when he stopped smoking for a brief time is an example of withdrawal from nicotine. Some people feel tense and nervous, unable to sleep. All they can think about then is smoking. Why are some people not affected adversely by smoking? It is true that some people, and it's actually a rather small percentage, seem to develop no physical problems from smoking. And there are some people who can smoke just a bit now and then and not increase their smoking. The reasons are complex but are understood. The causes of this are found in human genetics. All of us are unique. Our face, our hair, whether or not we get bald, our height, our body build, and so on, all are unique. Almost all cells in the body have a small package of protein formed by amino acids. There are 3 billion pairs of amino acids that make up human DNA, and these are clustered together into about 20,000 genes. The unique combinations in these genes determine what the cells in your body do. For example, there are genes for baldness, various types of cancer, the way the brain forms, and everything else physical. Let's discuss some details about one of the things we mentioned, cancer. There are several genes linked to cancer, but some genes are a lot like light switches. Something has to move a light switch for it to flip on. So, how this works in the body can be seen in smoking. The cells in the lungs are repeatedly exposed to tars and other chemicals when a person smokes. With many people, these chemicals and tars flip a switch in the DNA that causes the cells to start reproducing, meaning that the cell makes another cell, and that one makes more cells, and so on. This is one way that tumors or abnormal cell growths develop. There are some people, a small percentage, who appear to not have these types of switches in their DNA. Some people also have genes that keep them from increasing how much they smoke, and there are a lot of genetic factors involved in this issue. Some people do not even like the way nicotine makes them feel. Again, that's probably due to many genetic factors. But the absolute truth is that most of us carry some genes for some type of cancer, and it's usually switched on by exposure to something. Finally, types of genes tend to run in families. You got your genes from your mother and father in a unique combination of those two people. Why is it so hard to stop smoking? Smoking is considered by many treatment professionals to be the most difficult habit and addiction to break. It should be obvious from Sigmund Freud's experience that the unpleasant withdrawal symptoms make it hard for a lot of people to stop. A person who becomes addicted or dependent to any drug, including tobacco, will experience some type of withdrawal. They then crave the drug because the drug will relieve the withdrawal. But there is another force at work, and it's called habituation. Habituation is a term that comes from the word habit, something we do over and over. But habituation implies that the habit becomes so strong that a person feels almost compelled to do it. It becomes an unconscious, repeating behavior. For example, there are former smokers who find themselves moving their hands from time to time to their mouth as if they're holding a cigarette. Here is why. Think back to Uncle Ed's 4-pack-a-day habit of 80 cigarettes. Over just 1 year of smoking, he moved his hand back and forth to his mouth some 200,000 times. Over 10 years, he did it 2 million times. But he had smoked for over 40 years. He had done this little hand movement over 8 million times. And he had gone through the ritual of lighting a cigarette over 1,100,000 times. That ritual involved moving his hand to a cigarette pack, pulling out a cigarette, putting it in his mouth, then lighting a match or lighter and taking a puff. The cigarette is then moved from the mouth and put back in for another puff, and it goes on and on. It's a ritual done so many times that it burns into the brain. This means that the brain actually creates physical pathways between brain areas, and once these paths are created, there is a tendency to keep doing the same things again and again.